and welcome to the podcast, the Broad Street Review podcast. I'm your host, Darnell Radford, and today I'm in the virtual studio, transported through technology, through all these various wires and nonsense, all the way over to Bristol Riverside Theater to talk about the upcoming production, Jelly's Last Jam. And I am here with the director of this production, Tyrone L. Robinson. Tyrone, welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, Donnell, it's so good to see you again. Thank you for having me.
It is great to see you. I feel like I know I'm following you on socials, and I feel like a world of things has happened between the last time we've had a chat. The last time we spoke was for an Interact Theater Company production, but you're still in our community, and so we love that. But we're here at Bristol to talk about Jelly's Last Jam. But let's catch up with Tyrone first. What have you been up to?
First of all, I have to say someone got married, I understand.
Yes, I did.
Since again,
I am a husband now. We
congratulations.
are husbands.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. I've actually been back in New York where I live. I've done a couple shows on Broadway. I did a production called Swept Away that originated at Arena Stage in DC, and we brought it to Broadway. Following that, I did a production of The Pirates of Penzance. We adapted it. It was starred David Hyde Pierce, Jinx Monsoon, Ramin Karimloo. It was just a ball. So I had a chance to spend last summer on
Wonderful.
Broadway, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I've been doing some directing since then as well, some short film, and now back at Bristol.
Great, great. What is the draw for you that keeps bringing you back to Bristol?
Ooh, wow. Oh gosh. Well, this is my fourth show at Bristol, my third as a director. I think Bristol takes bold swings. They take bold choices and chances with the work that they do. It's always provocative and smart, but also they understand their audience, so they know what will bring in their audience, what will attract their audience. So there's the audience, I think, but also the team here is just top notch. We have an opportunity to work with really great artists from not only Philadelphia but also New York. So it's a nice blend of talent that we get to work with design wise. We have designers from all over the region and also from afar. So I think it's a first class theater in that we get a chance to bring artists together from various places. The production values are very high and the audiences are very smart, very discerning. And so it's a great opportunity just to like be an artist and be able to just do your work and not feel like people won't get it or they won't understand it. I was really surprised with Chicken and Biscuits how we really cultivated an audience and even a lot of new faces that had never come to Bristol Riverside before. So it's a great opportunity to do that with Jelly's Last Jam.
Yeah. Um, eh, they are in a great location.
Yeah.
It's not hard to get from New York to Philadelphia, but to be in between, I imagine it's a great opportunity for artists who are in New York to be able to come to Bristol and also still be in the Philadelphia area for all that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Bucks County is about an hour and 15 minutes, from literally from door to door. So there are
Yeah.
places in New York City that take me almost that much time to get to out in Brooklyn, Queens from where I live in Manhattan.
I do think about that all the time. If you're in like rush hour traffic, the amount of time it'll take you to get across the city is the equivalent of like being out of town
Yeah,
and like getting in.
exactly.
So you do the balance when you think about whether it's too far to if where you're living too far out from a city, like you're really not. Like sometimes it cuts through all that nonsense to get you right there. Yeah. So it's like jazz tap, not chaos, but like it's just blowing up all over the stage.
It's
Tell us about
sublime.
Jelly's Last Jam.
Yeah, it is a sublime musical tap dancing feast, I call it. So the show took about 10 years in development originally. August Wilson was one of the original authors of it, but was replaced by George C. Wolfe. It is a musical that burst onto Broadway in 1992. It was a big hit, won 3 Tony Awards. Starred Gregory Hines, tap dancing genius that he was, and Savion Glover. And it tells the story through music and tap dance of Jelly Roll Morton, the jazz pioneer, jazz legend, and jazz virtuoso. But it tells it through theater and theatrical jazz and tap dance. And so we have this hot, 1920s jazz score that is all original music that Jelly Roll Morton wrote, and it was adapted for this musical.
So I was doing like a quick, if someone doesn't know much about it and they type it in, they're gonna get some key things. So I did very quickly like, what about Jelly Roll Morton? And so the nickname Jelly Roll comes from a very interesting place.
Oh yeah.
So let's talk about it.
Well, yeah, so he got that name while he was traveling on vaudeville, the vaudeville circuit back in the 19 teens, and you know, he was born in 1891, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, or 1890, and so,
1890.
you know, he was a teenager, you know, in the early 1900s, and started to play in brothels, started to play piano in brothels, in that period when he was about 13, 14 years old. So you can imagine, you know, the world that he kind of grew up in New Orleans and what that was like. Storyville was an area, section of New Orleans where that type of life and work was legalized. And so he
Mm,
started to play in a place where that was happening. And throughout his travels, as he started to travel and perform in vaudeville, he adapted the name. And so the name has, you know, very mature implications, but so does jazz in general. You know, the original
yeah.
definition of jazz, JASS, you know,
Mm,
was meant to mean, you know, something sensual, and so it comes and originates from that world. If you imagine like blues and the world of like the old blues queens and people like Bessie Smith and Ma Rainey, it comes from
mhm.
that world.
It's interesting because jazz and blues are like raw, real emotion, and it's why it resonates so much with people, and it also feels dark in a way and not so, in terms of a society at the time that the picture they were trying to paint, placed everyone in blues and jazz as sort of like outsiders or like lower on the food chain arguably, but these are feelings and emotions that everybody has, but a lot of that we were not openly expressing, and so
Well,
it comes through in this genre of music.
and we couldn't, right? So, I mean, this
Yeah.
was a time in which, you know, we're not too far removed from the American institution of slavery, right? So,
Mhm.
you know, black folks are living in the Mississippi Delta, all over the South, and dealing with Jim Crow laws, dealing with sharecropping. You know, I met my great grandfather when I was a little boy, and he was a sharecropper. So this idea that, you know, you basically have the next wave of African Americans trying to move beyond being enslaved people and trying to move beyond servitude and a life of servitude. So, you know, what do we do when we're not being in service and when we're not working? We celebrate and we come together and we try to have joy and we try to survive through our music. And I think to your point, that emotion gets codified in the style of music that we now know as blues. But there was great joy in that, right? You know, it was happening
Mhm.
in places like the Funky Butt Club in New Orleans, which is where Buddy Bolden would play, and the Funky Butt, when I did my research, I learned that, you know, it was a church during the day and a community center during the day, community hall, and a juke joint at night. You know, it's the same space. So our set is actually based on the Funky Butt Club,
Mm.
this space where Buddy Bolden played and where you know it was joyful and fun at night, the juke joint. But then during the day, it was like a place of worship,
Can you imagine being in mixed company,
right?
just saying like, "What are you up to?" "Well, I was gonna go to the Funky Butt Club."
Right.
"What? How dare you,
Well, you know, the
sir?"
same people went to the Funky Butt. They went to church in the morning. So, like, you know, they would go to church in
Yes.
the morning and they would come back at night.
That's so funny. So was it the Funky Butt Club on Saturday night and it was church on Sunday?
Okay. Well, and you know, so one of the major things about our show is that because the play deals with Jelly Roll Morton's memories, right? So it functions kind of like a memory play because he goes
Mm,
back through the journey of his life and he
yeah,
has to defend his soul. And that's the whole idea, is that he's defending his soul and defending the choices that he made in life so that he can move on and be ascended. And so,
yeah.
you know, this whole idea that he, you know, lived a life that may not have been the most joyful and or the most reputable, he gets a chance to go back and have a second chance in the play, in the
Mhm.
musical. So I think there's a lot of joy in that. And for sure, he was having a ball in the Funky Butt when he was.
Where,
And so it's
it just
movable. You know, everything in the show has to be portable
yeah.
because during the day you had your church and you had your pews and all that, and then at night you had to clear everything out
Oh,
and
wow,
make it fun.
yeah.
So our
And
set is
and
very
they
portable.
and they probably helped keep the church going
Well, I bet, I bet.
because they
Well,
'cause
and
they
the
rented
space is
that
still
space.
there. It's still there. The building is still there. You know, we did research on Jelly's the house that he grew up in, and the house is still there. Yeah, in New
Wow,
Orleans.
crazy. So, this is a period piece.
Mhm. It is.
So, like, what's the conversation like in the room? Are you just like, "This is about Jelly Roll, it's on the page, let's go." Or is there, more information about the time period?
So I like to do a lot of research. And so to spare our cast and our company members a little bit, I provided some of the research to them that I did, some of the books that I read and some of the articles and just, various things that I found. But there are, like I said to you a little bit ago, there's a lot of intersectionality of the show.
Hmm.
So we're dealing with issues of colorism and issues of a man who really is struggling with owning and accepting his own and acknowledging his own African American roots. And
Mm.
so what is that? Psychology, right? In a world where it was not safe to even claim and be proud of who you were if you were an African American. And so we're dealing with a lot in there. But at the same time, we're also dealing with this style of music and this music that was so joyful and that still stays with us today. And so we focused a lot on Black brilliance and Black joy and what this music the legacy of this music, what it is. We focused a lot on how we could keep everybody in the space safe emotionally as artists. So we have a practice that we started from the first day of rehearsal where we, just basically checked in with each other each day to just kind of say, how are you? Really, how are
Hmm.
you? And we also, I provided this research, but people have brought in their own research and people have brought additional research. There's been conversations we've done. I call it a chat and chew, which is time outside of the rehearsal space. It's just voluntary, but the
Hmm.
majority of our cast has been coming, and we've done two of them so far, which is where we all just sit around and we just kind of check in with each other. And we're not necessarily meeting to even talk about the show. We're just meeting to just connect as artists and
Yeah.
just make sure that we're all staying well.
I love that because, the opportunity to unpack parts of the show are in that space, but it's really about making a connection with each other so that when you're on stage, you are in lockstep with each other and you're connected on a different level. And I feel like these huge ensembles, like especially with musicals, like it's really essential for everyone to get along. Like we're not in the audience thinking at all like these two people hate each other and they are killing it.
No. And I've done a lot of big shows. I mean, I did the Book of Mormon, I did the Lion King. I mean, the Lion King has like close to 40 cast members. It's a huge cast. And I will just say that just from that experience, from those experiences alone, I mean, then Pirates was 20 plus, 25 plus cast. They're gonna be relationships that form and they're gonna be people that are closer than others. But generally speaking, everybody just is professional and we bring our best selves to the process
Mhm.
so that there's not, we might not be best friends, but we definitely will be respectful with each other and be colleagues.
Yeah. So, talk about your Jelly Roll Morton.
Yeah. Okay, so Stanley Martin is our Jelly Roll Morton. He's actually from Bristol Riverside, or he's from Bristol, Pennsylvania. He did his first show at Bristol Riverside Theater when he was 9 years old. He did a small role in Romeo and Juliet, I believe it was here. And so he went to New York after graduating from high school in this area. He did performing arts high school, and he was in Aladdin on Broadway for about 7 years. And now he's coming back home to do the lead role in the musical here at Bristol Riverside. So it's really
Wow.
exciting. Yeah, it's been a fun, like, hometown boy comes home, story. And I think a lot of people from the area are really excited. The minute that we announced that he was doing the role, people were like, Stanley, like people who remember him
That's
from the area. Yeah, it's
that's awesome.
been really cool.
Also smart casting 'cause, they're gonna come down from the north all the way to his
Yeah.
hometown to be here, and then let's talk about this chimney man,
Yes, Forrest McClendon, who I
Tony
first met
Award
here at
nominee
Bristol.
Forrest McClendon.
Yes, yes, he was nominated for Tony for Scottsboro Boys. So
Mhm.
Forrest and I first met here at Bristol Riverside about 23, 22 years ago when I was 12. Yeah, this it was my second professional show as an actor, and, we
Mhm.
were doing Smokey Joe's Cafe here at the theater, and, he's gone off to have an incredible career as an actor,
Yeah.
but also as an educator and teacher now. Yeah, Forrest did the workshop of the show here at the theater about a year and a half ago when we first started doing workshops of it. He was chimney man in it, and the minute that he opened his mouth, I was like, "We have to ask him to be our chimney man." So he agreed after we did the workshop. Just one thing about Stanley, I just wanna, like, make it clear, we weren't like, "Let's find somebody from Bristol." Stanley came into audition in New York City, and we saw maybe 20 guys for the role of Jelly. He came in, unbelievable, blew us away with his obviously with his tap dancing, but also blew us away with his singing and acting. And then literally he turned to walk out the room and he turned back around and he was like, "Oh, and by the way, I'm from Bristol." And we all went like so like literally we
Everybody
found
yeah,
out after he did his audition and blew us away and he had a call
that's
back.
great.
Yeah, so it was just we didn't know or couldn't have even planned.
I could just hear her walking out of the room, papers being thrown all over
Oh
the
my god.
place.
I mean, as if we
It's
we were
like,
already
not only was he wonderful,
yeah. we were already like,
Yeah.
"That's our jelly," but then he said that, and we were like, double, triple times, that's our
Uh-huh.
jelly. Yeah, incredible.
Yeah, 'cause it matters, like, that strong characters will lead a
Yeah,
show.
he's
Yeah.
got a lot to carry, and he's killing it. He's doing a great job.
So take us into the room, like, what happens first? I mean, obviously, there's a little bit of, like, let's all shake it off and get ready, but what were the first rehearsals like? Was everybody excited and energetic? Like, how did you pull everybody together?
So the first thing for a musical this big, that you wanna tackle really is the music because there's so much to learn. This show has about
Mhm.
58 songs in it. Yeah, so it's a lot of
Yeah.
music. So, the music was the first thing that they tackled. They spent about 3 days, the first 3 days working on music. As they were doing that, I would pull people who weren't being used for learning music to talk about their characters and just to start the introductory conversations of understanding who they are and how they function in the narrative. Some people, they carry their characters throughout the whole show. So they have a
Mhm.
through line that kind of stays with them through the whole show. Some people come in one moment and then we never see that character again. So what does that mean? So there was a lot of that happening within the first 3 days. Now, because we have a choreography team of a local choreographer from here in Philadelphia, Yatande Whitney V. Hunter, who is actually on the dance faculty at Temple University. He's our jazz choreographer, and then we have a tap choreographer, DeWitt Fleming Jr., who's from New York. He's a Broadway choreographer. So DeWitt was only with us for a couple of days. Tande was with us for about 3 days our first week. So we wanted to take that opportunity that they were with us for that first week to start getting those vocabularies introduced. So we started doing some basic, like, movement choreography, and then we started to integrate, choreography with staging. And as we would stage a scene, we would discuss and we would do sort of what you might call basic table work. Now the cast has a foundation of who their characters are in relationship to the moments in the show. And now we start to integrate music, dance, and that table work with the staging. So it's kind of like an integrative process. We try to, well, and also, by the way, we only had 15 days to put the show up. So not a lot of time, but you try to make the best use of the time and the space and all the resources you
Yeah.
have. So some people might be in the theater lobby learning music while we're at the rehearsal studio learning
Mhm.
choreography. That we would do that kind of thing. We would kind of tag team and divide and conquer.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
the ultimate goal was to integrate so that we would bring it all together for our first sort of, I call them piece togethers. Some people call them stumble throughs. But the
Mhm.
idea is that you start to section by section link the pieces together so that the cast is starting to integrate and get a chance to get the flow of the show by running sections.
Yeah. I ask all of those questions 'cause they are a little bit inside baseball, but
Yeah.
I want the people to understand, like, listen, the people who are listening right now, you're buying your ticket to see Jelly's Last Jam, know that they had 15 days to pull this together, and they did it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just the talent that is on our stages is unbelievable,
It
people,
really
it's
is.
unbelievable,
Well, and
and
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
I'm thankful that we're actually showing now on the Bristol Riverside Theater social media a lot of footage from rehearsals so that people can see,
Yeah,
like, see what it looks like on a day-to-day basis. I get to watch
mhm,
these incredible tap numbers come to life,
yeah.
like, every day, and they get to watch it, when they come to buy a ticket.
Yeah, I just watched, a 30-second, tap clip today.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
I was like,
incredible.
"Okay." Yeah, I love those moments too because it's sort of a solo piece for
Uh-huh.
whoever's tapping, but then the rest of the ensemble is like, "Oh, okay. Alright," just, "Oh, Opti," just all the comments and the response, like, that energy transports itself into the audience, and the audience is feeling that way too, and I love moments like that because the audience doesn't have to feel like they have to sit prim and proper.
No.
They're gonna miss something, like, "No, this is a joyful moment. Everybody's in on this celebration
Yeah.
in that moment." So those parts are always really great. I always
Yeah.
love
Well, and
those moments.
the finale of our show even we go full New Orleans, because Jelly was born and raised in New Orleans, we go right to those roots for one of the final, I don't wanna give too much away, but one of the final moments in the show is a huge celebration, New Orleans style.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So talk about the visual of bringing this costume design into this overall story.
Yeah, so Levon Lindsay, the wonderful Philadelphia-based
Who we
designer
love
Levon Lin
so much. We love you,
Levon's
Levon.
amazing. Literally, so today, being our first day of tech, Here's our first day of seeing, like, all the actors on stage in their costumes, and literally at a certain point, I just turned to her. She was across the theater. I turned to her and I was like, "Lon, the costumes are gorgeous." But yeah, Laban's work is stunning. So her inspirations are obviously, because it is a period piece, her inspirations are largely drawn from, like, the period that we're depicting. But
Mhm.
within that, we talked, she and I, a lot about just the authenticity that we're trying to draw on from characters like the Chimney Man, who's based on a Yoruban deity. You know, the Honeys, who are they're described as chorus girls, but they function as characters that work directly with Chimney Man in his function in the show, in
Mhm.
basically creating the world that we all get to watch Jelly journey through. So her costumes for those are based very much on, like, those mythic characters. Kind of like the musical Hadestown has the Fates, you know, the
Mhm.
three Fates.
Yeah.
The Honeys basically function like the Fates. They're like our narrator, griots throughout the show.
Great.
And so, you know, Laban is drawn, I think, very heavily on those sort of historic characters. And then Jelly has his very specific style based on costume and period clothing. And then as characters transform throughout the show, they each get different pieces based on their characters and based on the time period.
Yeah. Are there I mean, this whole thing is your baby, as you're
Well,
thinking about it as a whole. I mean, in terms of, like, how you're approaching it, the whole thing is your focus, but are there any elements of either act 1 or act 2 that stand out for you? Or, like, when we get here, you're like, I can't I love this moment."
well, so act 1, we really get to watch Jelly have his rise, right? So Jelly
Mhm.
goes from being a teenager, he basically goes through 4 major phases in his life and his career. He starts off in New Orleans, then he eventually goes through a phase of where he's traveling and doing vaudeville performing, which is he was born Ferdinand Lamith Morton. He basically takes on the new name Jelly Roll Morton during those vaudeville years. Then we see him in the show in Act 1 rise to his highest level of fame and wealth in his Chicago years. Jelly Roll Morton moved to Chicago around 1920, forms his band, the Red Hot Peppers. They're a 7-piece band that he pulled, like, the finest musicians from all over the country to make his band. So we get to watch him conduct the Red Hot Peppers in the end of Act 1. And then we, in Act 2, get to watch him as he declines. We watch him at the
Mm.
end of his life as he goes to New York and basically tries to revitalize his career after the Great Depression, so in the early 90s. So we get to watch this full sort of, like, spectrum of his life until at the very end, he gets to the end of his journey, and we get to see whether he makes the right choice finally and in defending his soul and whether he gets to ascend or not. So there's not one moment in the show that I'm saying, okay, that's my favorite part, or that's a part that I feel like, is, like, the most important. But I do feel like we
Mhm.
get to watch, like, his whole growth as an artist, and then we get to watch him rise to wealth. And then second act, we get to watch his decline. So it's really
Yeah.
fascinating, the structure that way and the way that it's written.
Mhm. It's also interesting to see a story like that. When we think about someone who has any kind of celebrity, we witness their rise and we're like, "Oh my god, this is great. This must be amazing," and everything, and there's so much moving so quickly that there's a lot that they're not even paying attention to, or there's a whole lot that's not part of the sort of persona that they have created that is, like, allowing them to thrive in this way. And we don't always get to see those elements. That's why it's always so interesting when you know about a celebrity and then you find out, like, here's everything. We're pulling back the curtain to show you it wasn't all just we were in these big arenas and so on. It's like there's a whole lot of, like, family, situations. There's a whole lot of, like, tough moments that we never get to see, and we're just like, iconic, just wonderful, like, just your work makes me feel, but we don't always understand where that work comes from
Yeah.
and what we're avoiding to allow it to shine in this moment here. And so it's so interesting when when these types of stories, like, they take you through all of it, but they show you it wasn't all glamorous
Yeah.
and it wasn't all glitter and gold. There were some really tough moments here, and a whole lot of people got left behind in this process.
Yes.
And for him to have to confront it, in the way this story plays it out, it kinda calls to us ourselves. We shouldn't be rushing for whatever we're considering it's a kind of success or that goal you wanna achieve. You have to really make sure that you're not, burning bridges or, like, leaving people behind in this process, and so
Oh,
life moves slower
yeah.
than these situations are anomalies,
Yeah.
and so we're always looking at them to sort of model ourselves, but really, these are cautionary tales.
That's you took the words out of my I was literally gonna say, it's a cautionary tale. It absolutely is a cautionary tale. I wish we'd had you in our first week of rehearsals.
I was debating saying this because I was gonna ask you what you want people to take away from this experience, but I
Yeah.
I do think I think it is that when you think about these moments, it's just like all of this wonder and beauty. Sometimes this art comes from pain, and tough moments, and, which is another reason why, like, this piece at Bristol right now is speaking to the urgency of these conversations,
Yes.
why we need to make space for the art and we have to celebrate it. We can't let
Well,
these lights die
and specifically
out.
Black art and Black artists. I
Yeah,
mean, because we
absolutely.
history will repeat itself if we don't tell these stories, if we don't keep remembering to tell these stories,
Mhm.
we will certainly find ourselves back in a space where, the world is where it's unsafe to just be who you are. We can't
Yeah,
find ourselves back in that space. I think
absolutely.
there's a saying in the play that you gotta have grit to go with the gravy, and this idea that jazz was created just out of nowhere. I mean, it was from blues and from spirituals and work songs and from, the grit that was happening at the time, or the pain that people were living with, that Black people were living with at the time. So, it did not come from some fancy cotton club, you know, Tuxedo Tales and Nicholas Brothers
Mhm.
dancing beautifully on a
Yeah.
Hollywood soundstage. It came from the muck and mire of Black people being enslaved and the sort of literally on the backbones of people who were formerly enslaved who were now freed and now discovering the sound that they were creating based on the lives that they had lived, and that sound started in the form of things, instruments like the banjo and instruments like the acoustic guitar. We get instrumentalists like Muddy Waters and Sun House and all these artists who basically grew up in the Mississippi Delta, and that blues music that came from that world and then trickled down and trickled up eventually to places like Chicago. So, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. The grit to go with the gravy, it gives us the sound that became jazz as we know it. And
Yeah.
then black, rock and roll and all these other songs come out of it.
Spawn from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everybody. You got your marching orders. You gotta get your tickets. Did you get them already? Great. If you got them, great. If not, now's your chance. You can go get your tickets to Jelly's Last Jam. It's at Bristol Riverside Theater, brtstage.org to get those tickets. It's on stage now. If you're listening to it, March 31st through April 26th. And Tyrone L. Robinson, thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
taking the
Darnell.
time to chat about this. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and I hope
Always good to talk to you.
there's not a huge gap of time in between when we chat again. But I have my ticket. Everybody, get yours, and we'll see you at Jelly's Last Jam.
Bye bye.
Thank you so much. It was truly a pleasure.
Thank you, Darnell. It's always great to talk to you. You always have so much information about what you're interviewing for, and really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.